tell you what freedom is to me. No fear. I mean, really, no fear. If I could have that half of my life, no fear. That's the closest way, that's the only way I can describe it.
I'm Garrett McQueen.
I'm Scott Blankenship.
And this is TRILLOQUY, Trill Conversations challenging the status quo of classical music. Scott, there is a lot to talk about today. I need you to go ahead and put your phone down.
You came over a little flustered and opened up your book like, okay.
It's busy.
Where are we going to start? Okay,
no, it's busy out here.
Where do you want to kick off?
Well, before we get into the first movement, I just, a couple announcements from the podium, I guess you could say. I want to give a shout out to Double Reed Dish, the podcast. They gave us a really nice shout out, and I'm gonna tell you, my hat, and I'm gonna subscribe. My hat goes off to them now. A lot of people are shouting me out. A lot of people are saying Garrett McQueen's name. That's great. I am extra appreciative to them because they framed TRILLOQUY around the idea of people having been entrenched in the work that so many folks are doing now already. You know, how somebody didn't need to die for us to explore race and classical music and identity and all that sort of thing. So I appreciate the folks over there at Double Reed Dish giving me a shout out. Be sure to check out their podcast. I also want to give a shout out to Vanessa Rose, friend of the show, who received the Golden Baton from the League of American Orchestras for her work
Congratulations,
this past weekend.
Vanessa. That's very cool.
Congratulations to Vanessa. I was going to shout out Titus for his very successful Lift Every Voice video. Titus Underwood, if you don't know who he is, just YouTube Titus Underwood. And I think you said you were going to bring him up. Today.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll be getting back to him. Another pre-shout out to Stephanie Matthews, who I interviewed on the topic of a whole bunch of things, black music and, professional freedom, as we talk about that word freedom today as Juneteenth is coming up. And last but not least, I want to shout out the Star Tribune, who's here as we're taping this. Finally famous. We made it.
Welcome.
Okay, let's check our accidentals. Okay, I have one of each today. I mean, what are your accidentals looking like?
Well, let me go first because if you go first, mine's going to seem like sort of low rent. Okay, but I read an announcement that the Nashville Symphony has announced that they will resume concerts in the fall
of
21.
Okay, so that's probably a flat for you.
So, I just, that I don't really engage much with Twitter other than to see what people are talking about, right?
Yes.
So I stay on the porch.
Yeah, but you're looking. You're on the porch, but you're looking.
But I'm looking at it. And a lot of people who I know to be very concerned about the coronavirus and spread and, taking their due diligence to make sure that they don't get sick and pass it on. Even those people are saying, no, wait a minute, that's a long time. And so I started thinking about Titus because he plays oboe. He's principal oboe with the Nashville Symphony. So how is he doing? Has he got a side hustle that he can fall back on?
Well, on social media, he seems to be really happy. He is semi-recently engaged. Yeah. So he's all happy. Hashtag Black Love and all that. But as I mentioned just a couple of minutes ago, he put together that Lift Every Voice video, and I'm going to put a link. I'm going to make a note right now to put a link in the description. But basically, black musicians from across the country, all of whom I know, because the black classical music world is small. He put together this sort of montage of them playing an arrangement of that piece of music. It was actually shown at the League of American Orchestras conference finale over Zoom that Vanessa got that award at. It seems like he's busy, and Titus has been doing similar work to the work I've been doing here for a while now. So he's keeping busy. But Blair Tyndall, Mozart in the Jungle, who we had on a while ago, on her social media at the beginning of this, I'm talking about March, she said that she thinks that more than 50% of the orchestras aren't going to survive this at all. You know, so at least they're making plans to come back in 2021. But who wants to go crowd a concert hall? Not me.
So there's going to be some musician loss, right? I mean, if they're not going to be able to
hopefully
stick around, are they?
Well, hopefully, they'll figure out a way to pay them, or maybe just this fall of 2021 means that's when they'll be back in the concert hall, but maybe they'll be a part of education initiatives.
So what do you think about this move to rework the way musicians and artists are paid? There's like it's along the GoFundMe. Is it a Venmo initiative?
Are you talking about like a Patreon?
There. Yeah. So what kind of role is that going to play? Is that even an option?
I think for these, and one of the things, again, shout out to Stephanie Matthews. I can't wait to get to that interview. But one of the things she said was that the coronavirus put everyone on an equal playing field. So the freelancers are out of work and the Metropolitan Opera is closed as well. So what we're going to see is who has that spirit of go get you, that hustler spirit. And I think Titus has that, so he'll be fine. But a lot of these musicians will not be.
And I want to give a shout out to the last Opus, where I threw down the gauntlet to say the next orchestra that programs an all-black season wins. So let's see of the ones that
the Nashville blacked out, huh?
No, what I'm saying is it's going to be that much more of a challenge.
Yeah, but an orchestra will be that much more relevant if they decided to go ahead and do that.
That's the point.
They'll stick out more. Okay, well, let me throw out my accidentals here. So first and foremost, I need to put a natural on something that I was saying last time. Louis Chauvin's piece of music is the Heliotrope Bouquet, not the Heliotrope Waltz. So if you are having problems finding that, it's because I can't remember the titles of things. So it's the Heliotrope Bouquet.
So you're trying to say that even if you have the words Chauvin and heliotrope, you're not going to stumble your way into it?
I don't know. Let's move on. The brothel was last week, so I'm feeling a little better this week.
Go on.
Okay. I want to put a sharp next to a bit of national legislation. You can't be fired for being queer of any sort, a member of the alphabet committee, as folks like to say.
Were you surprised? Were you expecting a negative return on that?
Well, I woke up to news that that Trump had not extended those not extended those rights or whatever. But so I go and do some work. I had some interviews to do this morning. And by the time I cut the news back on, I cut CNN back on, I saw the breaking news that, the Supreme Court had made a decision that it's unconstitutional to discriminate in that way.
Hell yeah, it is.
Now, I'm not giving anybody a hand clap, a pat on the back, because again, as we've been talking about for the past few weeks now, why are all of a sudden folks expected to, get a thumbs up for being nice to people,
for doing what you should have been
doing. For doing the right thing? And I'm not going to stand on that soapbox for too long, but just a little sharp there. I'm going to put down a flat next to the city of Atlanta because they're going through it. The nation was already in upheaval based on what was happening here in the Twin Cities. And another person was killed by a police officer, rest in power to Rayshard Brooks, shot in the back running away. Did you see the video?
I did. I saw a guy that, even at the beginning of the struggle, I saw a guy who was afraid he was going to die.
And was sleeping in his car, right?
And why does, he shouldn't have been driving. Does he have to be taken to jail if he's stopped?
That's the thing, because it's illegal to be black. It's illegal to be black.
I'm sorry. I have a lot of those sort of reactions that I have to step back and check. I'm looking at it and thinking, well, he was stopped. How come they didn't just call an Uber for him or throw out an olive branch and give the guy a ride home?
I mean, how many people need to die? How many protests do there need to be before
And the important thing to remember is that by the police's own classification, a stun gun is not lethal. So if he got a hold of that, you're not going to die, right?
No, not at all.
And he was trying to run in the opposite direction. How come Atlanta didn't catch? Well, the Wendy's caught fire.
Oh, no, but they shut down the freeway for a while. No, yeah. Atlanta spoke up. Oh, don't, and they marched on the Capitol today. So yeah, don't think they're not out here doing it. So, again, rest in power to Rayshard Brooks. I want to come in here one week and not talk about police brutality, not talk about the police, but that's just sort of the era we're in. And if I remember, I'm gonna touch on this in my triloquy. Like I told you, I have a few things in the final movement today to cover. But just as a sort of preview, action is beginning to happen, in the positive, folks resigning, different bits of legislation as it applies to the police. But it's happening because things are making it onto tape. The populace is seeing it and the populace is reacting. OK, so where were all of these so-called good policemen when we weren't seeing things on tape, right? when things were just shuffled to the side? To name Breonna Taylor again, they're saying that she didn't even have an incident report.
No, it was, and the reason for the call was left blank. So if you look at all of the other suspicious circumstances where people of color have died in custody, and now you have to look at it and question every little bit of it. Yeah,
absolutely. Because every single one.
Just because nobody was there to record it doesn't mean that it was clean. And they're making stuff up. So
yeah.
That's a whole other opus.
To those families, to everyone impacted, our deepest condolences. All I can say, Scott, is I hope I'm not the next one. I hope I'm not driving to work and the police does me, because I'm going to tell you this right now. And if you're listening, remember this. If the police shoot me, I did not want peace. I did not want a peaceful protest. Oof. So that's that. Okay, so.
And in the movement two?
No, we're still in movement one. We're still in movement one. So
Thank God, because that was going to be a hard gear change.
So, okay. The main event for movement one, I decided to put a natural beside it because I have yet to decide if this is going to be sharp or flat or whatever. So folks who have been listening to TRILLOQUY for a while might remember the name Rob Deemer.
Oh,
he was one of our guests.
Yeah,
we interviewed him in February for Sphinx. Yeah, and his opus came out some weeks later. But he's in some water. He's in some water right now. So before we cut on the mic, Scott, I share with you a video recorded by a new Renaissance artist named Elizabeth A. Baker, in which she talked about being more than just a data point. The idea that black music and black musicians are being sort of tokenized by white-led institutions as a means of saying, hey, we're doing the work. Hey, we're the good white people in classical music and blah 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 blah. But she had a different sort of reaction to that.
Yeah.
What was your reaction to what I showed you?
I bet that Rob didn't know what hit him. Because we had a great conversation, and he's a great guy.
Yeah, and what I remember from that conversation most is that his sort of how can I say what was pushing him to do the work was the fact that it was just the right thing to do. That's the that's the language he used. But sometimes it can. Things can get away from you, and what seems like a good intended thing may not always be.
Okay, so now in an instance like this, I could see where a white person or somebody who leads a white organization might try to release a statement that will cover all the corners or do the best that they can.
Right.
Now, she took offense to the fact that she was not named specifically to correct how she was misidentified?
She was misidentified. Her artistry was misidentified, and I'm gonna reach out to her. Maybe we'll have Elizabeth on soon. I'm gonna reach out to her, but she said that she was misidentified as a composer when she identifies as a new Renaissance artist, and basically, again, the fact that she is more than just a data point. She's more than just something to fill in into the Black woman so-called composer category on the website, and
Understood.
And she believes there's more purview that needs to happen. And in the video that I showed you, and I'll link her, so just to make sure folks are viewing her content on her terms, but. Yeah, she said that there were so many other people who had similar complaints who just did not want to voice them. So since this bit of information, folks have really begun to distance themselves from the Institute for Composer Diversity, including some of the people who work there. And I wanted to read one statement from one of those people. So this person's name is Christian Michael Folk. I won't read the whole thing, but he says, "Hi all. For those who don't know me, I was the former master database builder for ICD, and as of June 13th, 2020, have severed ties with them due to implementation and ideological differences. I sincerely apologize to anyone who is affected or hurt by my work or by ICD. I'm committed to working directly with artists to increase the meaningful scope of my work through the accurate representation of their art. I've listed some thoughts and reflections about diversity database organizations and initiatives and the work that they do." And then he goes on into certain bullet points. So as you see, something has been boiling up, and as we sort of were talking about earlier with the police. Who knows what's been going on with outside of what we can see, and now that this example is coming up, I'm really sorry to say that I have to personally take a step back and make sure that I'm doing my part
100%.
when it comes to not only getting this music out there, exposing folks of these artists, but the folks that I point people toward when it comes to stuff like this. I've pointed countless people to the Institute for Composer Diversity, and for me to hear that composers and other artists of color are upset by what's going on, that kind of breaks my heart a little bit.
Yeah, I'm going to have to spend some time with that to really absorb what Miss Baker was saying. Boy, what a blind spot.
So Rob Deemer did send me the official statement. I am going to, it's long, I'm not going to read the whole thing. I will put it on TRILLOQUY.org. So if you want to read the statement, and don't want to go to their website, read it there. I'll just read the first opening couple sentences here, and this is new to me as well. So this is from Rob Deemer. "As the founder and director of the Institute of Composer Diversity, I wanted to publicly address some of the issues that have been raised in the last few days. First, I want to apologize again to new Renaissance artist Elizabeth A. Baker for not asking her permission before we featured her work and her image in our recent Spotlight feature. It was wrong for us to do so without her permission, and we are currently changing our policies and procedures so that incidents like that do not happen again." So that's just the opening. And just for me reading that opening the first time, I feel good about her being named appropriately and identified appropriately. That doesn't erase the issue. That doesn't erase what's going on. It certainly doesn't change the makeup of who works at ICD, because that's another issue I've been hearing. But yeah, it's really important. I struggled because, in a subsequent post by Elizabeth A. Baker, she talks about how the folks needing to explain themselves was also becoming frustrating for her, specifically when it comes to program notes. So I think about jobs like ours, our day jobs, our night jobs. Program notes kind of help us
get a sense
paint context for the listener.
Yeah.
So what does that mean? I wonder what your opinion on that is. Moving forward, understanding situations like these. Are you going to move differently when there is a composer on your playlist who you don't know? I mean, are there different ways for you to traverse exposing their sound to our audiences?
Wow, that's a great question, because I was just wondering that very thing. Because just last week there was a new 20th century composer that I hadn't come across, and there's just not much information out there about it.
Right.
And so what I'll do is I will look for somebody to give program notes that might give me an idea of where they were from. A village, if they talk about they were where they were born, or schooling. If you can tie it at all to something that's coming up later on in the hour, maybe they like a similar school or a similar thought tradition or something like that.
Just painting some context for the listener.
Yeah. So now, after listening to Miss Baker's comments, that's going to add another layer of prep, isn't it?
And then, of course, if we're presenting... Let's say we were presenting her music on the radio, and the information that we're sharing with the audience is information that we got from ICD. Are we not complicit in that?
Snap.
So there are really levels to this, and I can't wait to. Well, maybe we'll put a pin in it there. I don't want to get myself into the shaky situation of speaking for Elizabeth. So we'll definitely have to have her on TRILLOQUY. As a matter of fact, I'll reach out to her later on tonight. So that does it for my accidentals. I felt like we had a pretty hefty first movement.
Do you want to go dab your forehead real quick?
And we are back with Movement 2, Strike a Chord. First of all, I always enjoy during our little intermissions getting some more of your beer.
A full glass.
This Dunkelweizen is beautiful.
Oh, I'm glad you like it.
It adds, let's clink. It adds to the entire Gesamtkunstwerk, as they say in German. See, I'm tripping over myself already. The beer is so good. My German is...
This was I brewed this shortly after I recorded Hop Notes up in Duluth with Hoops Brewing, because he had one on tap, and I thought, I'm going to try that, and I should reach out to him. I don't know how he's fared with the virus shutdown and everything.
Yeah, but anyway, shout out to your beer. If you ever want to visit us here in the Twin Cities, you want to visit your TRILLOQUY hosts, Scott makes some really good beer.
Mm-hmm. You're welcome. Call ahead, text when you're close.
Okay. All right. So strike a chord. So we're coming up on Juneteenth, and over this past week, Scott, I was kind of thinking about music that I could connect with Juneteenth, but because so many people are trying to just all of a sudden take part in things, and all of a sudden, be down and so-called woke or whatever. I didn't want to performatively come on here talking about any spirituals or whatever. So, wade in the water, follow the drinking gourd. Y'all have the same internet as I do. I'm previewing my TRILLOQUY here, but it's so important to recognize what Juneteenth is, a celebration that sort of signifies, Black folks being free finally. But what does that mean? Were we ever free? Do you even feel free, as a non-descendant of slaves? We'll get into that here in a second.
I was about to say, here we're into the second movement. You've already blown my mind here. I don't know.
But
all right.
But the piece of music that actually did kind of strike a chord with me this week. So either last Thursday or Friday, in my 5 o'clock hour, I put in Jupiter from the Planets, because I had sort of a sort of theme going, and I tweeted. I hope Holst isn't problematic, because listening to Jupiter gives me hope. and some music really does. I kind of wasn't being sarcastic, but it turned into this long Twitter thread, as Twitter does. So, when I look at my phone and I see 57 Twitter notifications, I'm like, oh shit, what did I do now? But it was actually all pretty positive, and folks talking about their favorite pieces of music by Holst. And somebody brought up a Holst B-side, I'll call it, that I don't think about all that often. It's his Japanese suite. Have you heard of that?
I used to play that, yeah.
What you mean? Like on the program, on the overnights, yeah.
And well, yeah, when I was back in the day.
It starts with this really phenomenal bassoon solo that, I had even forgotten about. Shout out to being a radio host, because, you have to, you research so much music and just learn so much about so many things. So as soon as someone brought up that Japanese suite, I felt it in my bones. The phrase cultural appropriation just around the corner. But,
No.
but, the fact of the matter is, Holst wrote that in collaboration with someone Japanese, a dancer named Michio Ito. And I'll tell you, Scott, I searched far and wide on the internet just trying to make Michio Ito gay to go with the Pride Month theme. I didn't see any evidence, so I can't make that connection, even though he was a dancer. I'll leave it at that. But Michio asked Holst, to write him a piece of music to dance to in the Japanese style. So, going back to movement one for a second, talking about Rob Deemer and, how people can feel tokenized. I feel like that Holst Japanese suite is a really great example of, how it can be done right. How one person that belongs to a culture that they're not showcasing can still showcase that culture in an equitable way. Yeah. Now, what was the key? The key was he had a point of reference. He had someone from Japan who was asking him to write this, who I'm sure was in collaboration with him when it came to certain sounds, because, if you listen through that suite, you'll hear some sort of stereotypically, I'll use the word Oriental, as many of those composers would have, those Eastern sort of pentatonic sounds. But
I've switched over to ornamental.
Yeah. Yeah. And that can count for many cultures, But yeah, so take a look, and there are lots of really great recordings on YouTube. Just search Gustav Holst Japanese Suite. The whole thing is about 10 and a half, 11 minutes long. It's not that long. Again, as I mentioned, that beautiful opening bassoon solo and lots of Asian sounds written by an Englishman under the supervision of a Japanese person.
Convincingly.
Yeah, very convincingly. Yokatta, as they would say in Japan. Yokatta, Holst-san.
I want to... Yeah, cool. Yeah, I forgot. You said that you're better with Japanese than you are with, like, Spanish and things like that, right?
10年ぐらい日本語で勉強しました。
Hey.
Oh, you agree? Okay.
I know about as much as it takes to get through a karate class.
But you've been to Japan, though, right? Haven't you?
I have been to Okinawa. Yeah. But it is so run over with American culture that you wouldn't know that apart from the humidity. And
you don't need to speak Japanese in Japan.
And the snakes that will kill you 3 steps after they've bitten you. That's the only difference.
And that's enough for me. 3 steps, huh?
Back to the lecture at hand. I want to shout out Laura Downs, who did...
who's in my inbox right now? I'm going to read your email in a minute, Laura. I'm sorry.
Okay, but she did a whole survey of Florence Price piano pieces. It's really nice. So listen to that. But I have to go back to the last opus. You guys, Alicia Waller.
Shout out to Alicia.
She was singing right to me, and I was fanning myself. But I love the way she brings that sort of, you'll know the right terminology in opera, that operatic.
Oh, maybe that coloratura.
That sort of sensibility to something more in a jazz R&B sort of vibe.
Yeah.
That just had me.
And still incorporates lots of classical elements, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, so check out Alicia Waller.
And last shout out is if you want something that's a little bit more contemporary, check out the Rachels RACHEL''S. They have really nice sort of pop flavored string compositions with a little bit of percussion in the back, real appropriate, sort of, again, like I said,
not too much drums.
This would not be out of place on our window piece, the short piece that we play at the top of the hour. So.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's what struck a chord with us this week. So we're moving into movement 3. As I mentioned before, today's guest is Stephanie Matthews. And the reason why I chose Stephanie for this opus is because I've always viewed her career as close as classical musicians can get oftentimes to freedom. So Stephanie does the booking and the contracting for so many of these phenomenal performances that you see on TV. Maybe if you remember the opening performance of the last Grammys with Lizzo, she was backed up by an all-black woman orchestra. Stephanie was not only in that orchestra but contracted it. She's been on the BET Awards. I mean, she's worked with Travis Scott. She's worked with countless people. She'll talk about an artist named PJ Morton in the conversation I have with her. But it all started, Scott, when she went to an Erykah Badu concert and couldn't get in. They had she says that she and her homegirl spent their last $10 to put it in the tank just to drive to the concert in hopes of getting to see and meet Erykah Badu. Well, won't you know that they did, and that is where it all started for her. Stephanie and I talked for almost 2 hours. I kind of chopped up our interview, our talk a little bit for her to kind of go into her ideas of Black music, still being in Black Music Month, but also, that idea of freedom, professional freedom, and what that means and what that looks like. So I hope you enjoyed this conversation between myself and Stephanie Matthews. She gives all of her information at the end of our chat. She has this company called String Candy, which you should definitely check out. Where we're going to jump in is where Stephanie, begins to talk about her first interactions with Erykah Badu and where it all started. So we'll hear that after a short excerpt from Nina Simone. So we began this whole opus with her definition of freedom, right? When I think about freedom and when I think about Nina Simone, I think about the song that she famously sang about that slave who finally has this freedom but doesn't feel like there's anything else. The song Ain't Got No, I Got Life, such a moving song. So how about we listen to just a little bit of that and then we'll get into my conversation with Stephanie Matthews.
When you had asked me about my initial, I guess, plunge into more mainstream territory was post Sphinx competition. I was in Detroit with my friend Shelby Latin, now Shelby Harris. Her mom drove us up to Detroit. We were both at IU at the time, and the gala had finished. We were getting ready to head back on the road, and we were driving past Fox Theater in Detroit, and we saw that Erykah Badu was headlining and Floetry was also on the ticket, and we begged her mom to allow us to go. And, so I guess she figured she would pull over, take a quick nap in the car, let us, do our thing, and then keep it moving. And we had the brilliant idea. You know the story, but, for the sake of the listener.
Yeah.
We had the brilliant idea, since we were dressed in our formal black, let's see if we could sneak backstage. We had our instruments.
I would have never gone there, but y'all went directly to that thought.
Yeah, I don't know why. I mean, I really couldn't tell you why, because I don't think I've snuck into a concert since then. Like at all. I mean, obviously, like as a musician, I know other musicians, so it's, it's not, you don't have to sneak in. But yeah, apparently we thought that was a good idea at the time. And we were able to see the schedule, which showed that they were going to be in Indianapolis the very next night. Mm-hmm. So we ended up, we ended up buying tickets anyway. They kicked us out from backstage. Clearly they were like, definitely not. And so we did watch the show from the audience. And then the next show, I think it might've been like 2 days later at the Murat Theater. We made up in our mind we were going to go. I don't remember. I think we had planned to leave like right after orchestra. Orchestra was like the last class of the day. Mm-hmm. So I made a few copies of my audition CD for grad school because that's all I had. I was like, we got to have samples of work. So I brought 6 of them. And so I basically gave 3 to Shelby and was like, just give them these. They won't know.
Right.
They won't
right.
know, the difference. So, so she had 3. I had 3. We were ready to lock and load. Drove up on my last $10. I mean, Garrett, my last $10. Do you understand what I say?
Wow.
The $10 went in my tank. And that was barely enough to get us to Indianapolis and back to Bloomington round trip. So when I get there and see that parking was like, who knows, $5, $10, I don't remember how much it was. I couldn't afford it. Neither of us could afford it. So I parked way at the back, kind of like where the tour buses were, locked my wheel hard to the right because I was like, if they tow me, then they'll have to wait till all the cars are gone so that my car doesn't hit the next car. And I was just like praying, like, please do not let me get towed because I won't have money to get it out. But anyways, because we were back by the tour buses, we saw Erica and Floetry's bus along with their band. So like we were just kind of sitting out on the curb. We had no money to pay for tickets. We were just hoping we would get a chance to meet them. She walks out. Erica at the time was pregnant with Puma. She's like, what are you guys doing sitting outside? The show's inside.
Wow.
We're like, well, we're college kids. We can't afford it. We love you, but we can't, we'd love to see the show, but we don't have money. We were just hoping we'd get a chance to meet you. She got her tour manager to give us VIP wristbands. Whoa. So we're like in the front, in the VIP section. And then like right before the end of the show, we rushed back, towards the buses because I was like, I want to keep an eye on my car and make sure I don't get towed. And also hopefully, get a chance to say thank you. And that's when we bumped into PJ Morton. And by this time I had already given some samples, like the recordings I gave one to Natalie, the girl from Floetry. I met Marsha in Detroit. I distinctly remember meeting Marsha in Detroit, but I met Natalie when we were in Indianapolis. Mm-hmm. And then the rest I gave to Erica. And she was like, yeah, we don't have... I'd love to have strings in my band, but she was like, we kind of already have our band set up, but, I'd love to take a listen to your stuff. Then PJ, who was playing auxiliary keys, and I think he was singing background vocals at the time with Erica, was like, weren't y'all the girls that were in Detroit? He was like, are y'all roadies or something? I'm like, no, we're not roadies. But, I was like, where are you? So we saw you were going to be in Indianapolis. We wanted to catch the show. So we, we're talking, making small talk, talked about how, we were both violinists. He was like, oh, well, do you write? And I'm like, yeah. I mean, I was very good with counterpoint. I mean, I know that I had a strong ear.
Yeah.
So, and we had all kinds of like composition projects that I did very well with in school. And so that was my initial reaction, like, oh yeah, I write. Not thinking like, do you arrange strings? You know what I'm saying? I didn't even know string arranging was a thing at that point. Music school educated me, did not know that music arranging was a thing. Okay, because it wasn't something that was talked about in that way. I mean, being a composer is one thing, right? But
an arranger.
Yeah, it's a very unique thing. I didn't even know that it was something that people professionally do. So when he said write, I was like, oh yeah, I've done composition projects. And he's like, well, I'm working on my debut album. I really want strings. I didn't have any more CDs to hand out, so he gave me a PO box that I could send my stuff to, and he was like, I love your stuff. Let's do it. And so he flew me, my friend Shelby and Shelby's sister Coley, who played cello, flew us down to Atlanta, and that's when we recorded the Emotions album. And that shot, PJ, I think I could single him out in saying that he definitely gave me like my first opportunity in like getting my foot in the door when it came to like navigating the more mainstream space. Because after his Emotion, the work that we did on the Emotions album got the attention of then up and coming music director Adam Blackstone. And Adam had just gotten the placement with Kanye West for then his upcoming Glow in the Dark tour. And he was looking for someone to go on the road as lead strings. Now, mind you, I'm in East Harlem, like in my raggedy little apartment, teaching kids, for like $15 an hour. And I get a call and he's like, yeah, I met you in, I think it might have been Nashville. I'd done a couple of spot dates with PJ at that point. And he was like, yeah, I loved what you did on the Emotions record. And I want to get, I want to have someone come out who can write, quickly, and someone who could be lead strings, because we're going to, we'll probably have a string section. So I'm just like, okay. He says Kanye West. I'm like, the name sounds familiar, but I didn't even know who Kanye West was.
That's like incredible. That.
Wow. And so when I told my sister, I was like, yeah, it's like an artist. I think he says like Kanye something. She said, Kanye West. She said, girl, you better go. Literally. And so I had to look him up because I didn't really listen to, I mean, the hip hop that I knew and that I listened to was like Nas. I knew a little bit of Common. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to think if there is like maybe like KRS-One, like
sure,
just
the,
like
the,
little
the classic, the classics, yeah.
But I wasn't like a hip hop head, you know what I mean? So yeah. I just really didn't know, and I remember that was kind of around the time Kanye was doing these college tours, and he had done a show at my sister's school. And she was like, you should go. You need to go. You need to go. So I looked him up and I'm like, man, this could be cool. But really, they would want like a classical violinist to go on the road with them. And so, he was like, I'll have the tour manager reach out to you. At this point, I was just like, it seemed like such a far-fetched notion. And when I got the call and they gave me the dates, which they were going to fly me out 48 hours later to LA for production rehearsals, I had to call all my schools and all my principals and let them know that I was going to be gone for the rest of the school year.
That must have been tough. Or maybe it wasn't.
It was strange because half of them didn't believe me. They just thought I wanted to quit.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So it was definitely, I was in shock. No doubt about it. I was definitely in shock. But that was the pivot point for sure. It started with PJ, and then kind of like developing that relationship with Adam Blackstone has definitely like set me on, I think, the current career path that I'm on now.
And that the way that your career has just evolved has always reminded me of the path to freedom. I've described your career as freedom. You're not punching into anyone's clock. You didn't have to worry about furlough or unemployment in light of the coronavirus. There were just certain freedoms that you had, and as
certain freedoms, yes.
And that's what I wanted to ask. As we're coming up here on Juneteenth, and we're thinking about that word freedom. Is that a word that you would use to describe yourself or your career? Do you feel free?
In some ways, yes, but in some ways, no. Ultimately, no. But do I feel a sense of freedom in my career? Yes. And I would say yes because, I think I had hit a level of frustration within the traditional classical schematic.
Mm-hmm.
And, it started, while I was a student in school, and just the reception that I had from certain teachers, not all of my teachers, but I had some pretty incredible teachers, thank God. But I also had some pretty awful teachers.
Sure.
And so when and I think maybe that's why, for me, it was like a breath of fresh air having the opportunity to work with PJ. It was like something so different from what I had been doing, such a break from the routine. And I was just like, whoa, what is this? And so then when I did get in touch with Adam, like I finally connected with Adam Blackstone, and going on that Kanye tour, I didn't even know what tours paid. No clue. None. And so after that experience, I was just like, literally, I was like, I'm doing this wrong. Literally, I'm doing it wrong.
You cashed that first check and something made sense.
The direct deposit hit and I'm like, what? Are you serious right now?
Yeah.
I was traveling on someone else's dime. I hadn't seen the world like that before.
And you were doing all that with your violin.
All of that with my violin. And, and even with that, coming back, at the end of tour, I was able to, get us a website, get a web designer, do a whole full-on photo, you know what I mean? So it was this is allowing me to, fund projects that I'm really passionate about. And, so I think that started as I got more and more opportunities to tour and to collaborate with various artists and build relationships with various labels and music directors. I think it definitely changed the course of my career because it changed my perspective for me. Because I love music, Garrett. I love classical music. There's no two ways about that. But I also really value the ability to pay my bills.
Amen.
I appreciate, being in a space where I am valued. My artistic input is valued. My voice is valued. The way that I play is valued. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That was new. I didn't feel that in the classical space in the same way. I just didn't.
So wrapping that concept around to the idea of, the work, especially these days, we have all of these organizations and their new DEI initiatives and all these awakenings they've been coming to. What do you see as the most authentic and organic way for more musicians that look like us to, get this new perspective that you've had? It's like someone grabbed your hand and pulled you into this new world. How can we make that more of a ubiquitous experience for Black musicians who happen to play, these classical instruments?
The decision makers have to be more diverse. Simply put, show me your boardroom, show me your board of directors, show me the people who are making the decisions on behalf of your organization, because if they're all white, we're probably not gonna, things are not going to change
Right.
in the time frame that they really should and need to change. It's really that simple. I think human beings are kind of change averse in general. Some more than others, but that has to change. We've been talking about it and screaming from the rafters, like, please change, please change. And then COVID-19 hits and shuts everyone down,
Right.
which has leveled the workspace in a way that is unprecedented. We've not seen it like this before.
And what do you mean by that, level the workspace?
What I mean is freelancers are out of work and the Metropolitan Opera Orchestra is out of work. So who's better than who?
Yep, there we go. And
You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And here we are. So
who's more dynamic? Who's more marketable? Who's
more versatile?
Who's more prepared?
More marketable?
Yeah.
Who's better equipped to remote record and work from home? If if your day to day exists like in going to a dedicated rehearsal space and going to a dedicated concert space and having a schedule carved out for you, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying this is where we are. So I think people have really had to assess differently. Different things are valued. When we look at like essential workers, for instance, right? What was all important prior to isn't so important anymore.
Right,
People aren't looking at social media influencers. No one wants to hear from you right now.
I didn't want to before, but yeah.
Correct. So it's shifted in a way that we have not seen before. And I think that, coming back to your initial question, I think that the decision makers have to be more diverse because there have to be different voices and different perspectives in those rooms.
Yeah.
It has to be. I mean, to think that you are just so even for me to think that I'm just so progressive to be able to like step outside of myself and see things from someone else's lived experience is impossible. I can't, right? I live and breathe and exist as Stephanie Matthews, as a Black woman, all of my personal and professional identifiers. But that's, I think, what would make the orchestras more dynamic. I think it would make programming more dynamic because honestly, people are tired. People are tired of the same stale programming. People are tired of the same stale looking billboards. I mean, frankly speaking, I'm tired. And I love it. I love classical music, and, this notion that, people are just not paying what they used to. Your concert halls are empty because your programming sucks.
Right. Exactly.
People are not in your concert hall because, your orchestra is not relevant in most times to the communities that they exist within.
Yeah, and I think that's an even more accurate way because, music is a subjective sort of thing, but, that relevance, that real impact is what so many of these organizations are missing.
Relevance.
Yes.
And you know what? We would not be having all of these, extensive and boring, frankly, DEI conversations and diversity and inclusion initiatives if their bottom line wasn't being affected. If they were still bringing in the money that, that they were enjoying, this wouldn't be a conversation because there would be no need for them to change anything that they've been doing.
Right. Wow. Well, as we wrap up here, someone listening right now has a little Black girl that they want to get involved in violin. Maybe there's a teacher out there that's teaching these young kids from the more marginalized communities and trying to get expose them to this art form, so-called classical or otherwise. What are your words for them? What advice do you have for folks helping these very young musicians start their journey?
I think it's important to be very, very careful about languaging when it comes to dealing with young people because they are the future, right? They represent where we're headed. And if we can empower them and support and uplift and encourage them, I mean, hopefully we will be in a much better, much stronger position than we are today. You know, talent knows no demographic. I mean, success is not limited by, you know, the socioeconomic constructs that we think of. Opportunity is key, right? And if we can empower a young mind to really truly believe that they can do whatever they set their mind to with the diligence and, you know, the passion and instilling the work ethic, I mean, we would just have a much richer tapestry. And I think we'd be much prouder of ourselves as a country.
And maybe they wouldn't have to, you know, struggle the way that you and I had to in school on our last $10, as you said earlier.
Yeah. And to be honest, I don't necessarily think that struggle is bad. It's like, what is the struggle?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So.
And what's learned from it?
Yes. Like, because you absolutely, you're not going to learn from your comfort zone. Okay. So I think it is important for us to be stretched in a way that allows us to grow, allows us to develop, allows us to learn. But, you know, to continue to banish, you know, certain groups of people to obscurity is just, it's irresponsible. I mean, and I don't think we can't stand for it any longer. We all have something to contribute. And it's, you know, I think of this like the Crayola box, right? No one's going to the store to buy, you know, the four pack that you get for free at the restaurants, right? You want the big jumbo box. Why? Because you have more colors at your disposal to create something really beautiful and dynamic. It's like a toolkit, right? The more tools in the toolkit, the better able you are to build, the better able you are to construct something. So I think with that in mind, I would love to instill into that little girl or that little boy that dreams do come true. I think it is really, really important to identify people who really support you and love you and want to push you to be better. Because there's a world of opportunity, world of opportunity, and we need you. We need the next generation to step up.
And back to that point of, you know, not being able to learn and grow in your comfort zone, you know, that certainly applies to music. Many of my lessons were not comfortable, you know, but I grew from them.
100%.
But then also, you know, in the conversations of racial equity that we're having right now, you know, white people stepping outside of that comfort zone, men stepping outside of their comfort zone when it comes to the intersection of race and sex, you know, and the unique challenges of Black women. I think that's a really good point to end on there, stepping outside of that comfort zone so you can learn and grow. For folks who want to learn more about you, about the work you do, maybe even book you, how can they get in contact?
Well, you can reach me on my website at www.stringcandy.com. I'm also on social media. You can find me on Instagram at Steph on Strings, which is STEPHONSTRINGS. I'm also on there as String Candy Music, which is at just String Candy Music on Instagram. You can follow me on Facebook, Stephanie Matthews, or String Candy on Facebook. I really do love engaging with audience, with artists, with students. So please feel free to drop a line, a message. And if you want to contact me directly, you can contact me for booking directly through the website.
I think I think when we get off the line here, I'm gonna sit in front of my TV and watch your performance with Mary J. Blige, so I can sing "I'm Going Down" as I watch you play the violin.
Oh, God.
Stephanie, it's really been such a pleasure. Thank you for being on.
Thank you for having me, Garrett. I really, really appreciate talking to you. Anytime.
So again, thank you to Stephanie for being on. I think I'm gonna actually, Scott, what I'm gonna do is get our full conversation, and I'm gonna release that as a bonus. So
cool.
if you're listening to this on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, just look for a bonus episode. You can also go over to TRILLOQUY.org and catch our entire conversation. She has some really phenomenal things to say about education. The protests we're seeing. So yeah, definitely check that out. But
speaking of Erykah Badu, as we started into that segment, do you remember that shirt I saw when I was walking radar around the lake? Erykah Badu plus Cardi B equals balance.
Okay.
What do you think of that?
I mean, that's the very wise, the very Erykah Badu being this queen, and then you got Cardi B being one of the new princesses, and you're sitting here patting your heart. You're a good-looking guy, Scott, but I don't know if Erykah Badu is going to give you the time of day. I'm just sorry.
Did I
melanin
ever announce like if all of a sudden it came out that she was single, I'd be like, all right, here's my chance. No, but she is a
phenomenal artist.
A phenomenal artist who, like very much like Alicia, sings to you. Yeah. She makes you feel like you're swaddled in gossamer loveliness.
Yes. Amen. Okay. So movement forward, the TRILLOQUY. I have a few things, so maybe you should just go ahead.
I'll go ahead and punt. Because you know the name Zachary Wolf?
I don't.
Okay, Zachary Wolf is he writes for the New York Times. He used to be like their opera correspondent, the man on the scene at the operas. But kind of like Rob Deemer, he's in some water, but his is much hotter because he posted a story called The Sheku Effect, a classical music star rises, with the byline, Sheku Kenna-Mason, a 21-year-old cellist from England, could be what classical music has long lacked, a black headliner. And I went...
Oh, he's getting dragged.
I went, bruh.
Oh, they dragging him.
Okay, and so just sitting down, just for fun, I started to roll them off, right? Awadaj and Pratt, James DePriest, Bobby McFerrin and his father, Robert. He's in New York. He's not going to say Jesse Norman, Leontine Price, Kathy Battle, the whole Marsalis family.
Right, all of them, yes.
I was howling at the inept. And there was one point in the article, if you read the article, there's one point where they start to hit on something. If you put more orchestral instruments in the hands of people of color, you will have more people of color playing classical music. And he totally took a left turn away from that. I mean,
that's just not true. Just for the record, we know that is not true because certain systems have been put in place to keep us off of that stage.
Right. No, all I'm saying is that it just glossed over any of his challenges. Mm-hmm. It was this sort of fairy tale rise sort of thing. Just go read the comments underneath his post.
So what are your words to him? Get him together, Scott.
Dude, a 5-second Google search would have saved you from the byline tragedy alone. I'm at a loss.
Cultural competency.
I'm at a loss.
Cultural competency. Okay, so speaking of cultural competency, let me get to one of my TRILLOQUYs for the day. So I'm going to let me start by saying this. The only reason I am not naming this person is because they do very important work on the on the front of gender equity in classical music. I very much believe in that. You know, that's how I get down. As much as I fight for the black composers of color, I fight for the women composers. So I'm not going to, throw a rock at her because I really do believe in her work. Now, with that being said, this person who I'm going to call, give me a woman's name.
Karen.
No, y'all not gonna get me. I'm gonna call her because you don't have a problem me trashing a right?
Let's go ahead.
Okay,
I might be triggered.
Went in my inbox the other day, actually about a week ago, asking, for resources about more black woman composers. Now, as I kind of said before, everybody been in my inbox. It's and I'm appreciative. I always help where I can, but I can't always get back as quickly as I would like. So anyway, I got back to this person who I'm calling, and based on her question, I felt like the best. How can I say, the best resource for her was ICD. Okay, but that's not actually the issue. But anyway, okay, so I point her to ICD. A few minutes later, and this is the problem with Facebook, all the drama. A few minutes later, she posts on her Facebook talking about how men are so patronizing, how they don't listen to women. As a matter of fact, today I had a man in my inbox pointing me to the Institute for Composer Diversity as if this is a place that I wouldn't have known. Men suck, or blah blah, and I'm not upset with the man dragging because more times than not I agree. But don't come to me for help and then try to publicly, unnamingly shame me when I give you what I see as the best resource. And
But
just
didn't she say that she already had that?
She did say that, but I'm not patronizing a person for pointing them to what I see as our best resource when it comes to that sort of thing. Now, I want to broaden that specific incident out a little bit. There have been a lot of people in my inbox, wanting to engage certain conversations surrounding race and classical music, not really understanding what they want from me. There's been so many.
They're asking you to do the work.
They're asking me to do the work. There have been so many sort of think pieces out by this time about how tired black people are of answering that same question from everyone. How are you doing? Not well. Okay. So if you're listening to this, I'm not doing well. There's a lot going on, okay? I really appreciate your reaching out. I don't want this to sound like I'm railing against, everyone that reaches out to me, but this is a stressful time, and it's up to all of us to really think as far as we can when it comes to the way we're asking for each other's help, okay? Because we all have the same internet. We all have the same access to literature that's being written. So make sure that you are, by the way, literature and research done by black people. So make sure that you're supporting them. Don't just take the comfortable, easy route and asking your black friend about X, Y, and Z when the information is there. Okay. Item 2. That essay that I wrote, okay? So if you'll go to yourclassical.org, you'll probably see still the essay that says The Power and Complicity of Classical Music.
I've been pumping it too.
They are shook, Scott. They are shook.
Say more.
People, again, in my inbox, trying to make every excuse for Handel and Delius because I named them in that essay. All I have to say about that is what makes a person so upset about learning that one of these composers who you never knew personally had ties to systemic racism, namely the transatlantic slave trade. I don't understand this protectionism that people feel obliged to wrap around these composers.
I imagine some of the same sort of people who want to say, oh, but R. Kelly has some jams though, So do you still listen to Step in the Name of Love? Or
No, I don't.
Okay,
No.
So I'm going to guess that the Florida Suite is not coming up in your rotation.
No, it's not. I take it out every time it does.
Okay.
And anything by Handel, and it kind of drives me to a point that I feel like I always make. In all of classical, there is too much music out there for us to be worrying about these two people. There will always be something else to fill in the gap.
But my question about reading it, because listen, y'all, this is like a 2 on the Garrett scale of 1 to 10.
Right, I wasn't even cussing.
No, this wasn't even a hot take, right? But go check it out, and you'll get like the picture book entry into Garrett. I want to know if anybody they were upset about you calling out Delius and Handel. What about the fact that you named George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor? Did anybody come at it from the aspect of we don't want to hear this, along with we don't want race mixed in with our
plenty
music.
of that as well, but that's not new, because my doing this work is not new, and neither is that sort of feedback as far as the escapism that people want from classical music.
Yeah.
The last thing I will say, and this is it for real, because I think we're running a little long. I brought it up in the first movement. I'm gonna bring it up here again. The idea that people are not trusting the police is valid, because for the first, well, not for the first time, but in mass these days, we're seeing these police killings on tape, and the reaction to it being seen is where the so-called positive reaction from law enforcement and from government is coming from. So will we be seeing any movement if it weren't for those tapes? Let's go back to George Floyd. If that, and they're talking about giving the young woman who took that tape an Oscar.
Really?
Think about a piece of film that changed the world, that sparked a movement. But anyway, think about if that tape did not exist. With these so-called good police officers come out to the front and say, hey,
there'd be no movement.
there is this police officer that I need to call, so I am really looking forward, and shout out to the Minnesota Orchestra while I'm thinking about it, for cutting their ties with the Minneapolis Police Department. Maybe you read about that.
Yeah, a lot of people are now saying, well, who are you going to call when you have trouble in downtown Minneapolis?
Well, my trouble has always been with them, so that's that.
That's the perspective that they need to hear, though.
Yeah. All right. Well, that does it for me. Does that do it for you?
I have to go. I have to go lay down.
Okay. Well,
no, I'm kidding.
I will leave. I've really enjoyed the way that we're just abruptly ending these lately. So I'll close out this opus with a quote from a famous poet, poetry set to music from the early 90s. Fuck the police.
Fuck the police.